Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, 5:15 regular Planning Commission meeting. The meeting will now come to order. Remotely joining AB 2449, Commissioner Leon will be joining us remotely and will be given the opportunity to make an announcement.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I will be joining remotely due to just cause circumstances under AB 2449 due to contagious illness. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leon. Tonight's invocation will be given by Ms. Musayeb, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mr. Flores.
Dear Lord, we thank you for the ability to come before you with this commission. We invite you to be here with us this evening and grant us wisdom with each case and situation that is presented before us tonight. In your name we pray.
Now you place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Commissioners, please announce any item you're recusing from due to a conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call of the Planning Commission?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner Boado,
Present.
Commissioner Leon,
Present?
whom is joining us remotely for the first time within the calendar year under AB 2449 due to an illness, and Commissioner Mendez,
Present.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Present.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Present. So staff is requesting to continue item number 2 on the agenda to the next Planning Commission meeting scheduled for June 19th, 2024. May I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
Do we want to proceed with the motion?
Yes, I'll motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Leon. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call of the Planning Commission?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes. All right. We will now begin with item number 1 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 5:21 p.m. May we please have the staff report, Ms. Musayeb?
Yes, one moment.
Mona, just before you start, this is Stephen Jones, City Planner. City Attorney Lloyd, were you able to hear? I think you were having difficulty with.
I now hear. I apologize for the delay. I wasn't hearing before, but now all systems go.
Great. We just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that, Stephen.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, fellow staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Musayeb, Associate Planner with the Bell Gardens Planning Division, and this presentation is to discuss Zoning Code Amendment 2024-029 and introduce ordinance number 944 regarding banquet facilities. Oh, my goodness. There we go. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine the project categorically exempt based on the common sense and policy adoption provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, pursuant to the state CEQA guidelines. And second, to adopt resolution number PC 2024-13 to recommend to City Council the approval of zoning code amendment 2024-029 and recommend adoption of ordinance number 944, thereby amending the Bell Gardens Municipal Code to regulate banquet facilities. Key discussion points revolve around, firstly, over the years, staff have been approached by property owners with underutilized buildings located within the light industrial zone, M1, to determine if banquet facilities may be permitted. Each time, members of the staff inform them that such uses are not permitted in all industrial zones, but are conditionally permitted in certain zones, such as the commercial manufacturing zone, CM. By conditionally permitting banquet facilities in the M1 zone, significant contributions to the improvement in the city's aesthetics and land use function, particularly in light of vacancies caused by the current pandemic, may take place. Secondly, by updating the Bell Gardens Municipal Code to include locational, developmental, and parking requirements for banquet facilities, private enterprises may arise to meet the needs of the residents for places of assembly and to diversify the local economy. And by amending the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, there would be room for economic growth and use of underutilized buildings by conditionally permitting banquet facilities, the use if appropriate development and development standards are met. The zoning code amendment 2024-029 proposes to amend the Bell Gardens Municipal Code Title V, Business Licenses, Regulations, and Taxes, and the Title IX Zoning Code to clarify the business regulatory permit definition, add banquet facilities as a conditionally permitted use within the M1 zone, and amend the development and parking requirements associated with assembly use citywide to expand choices for private investment and economic development. There are 4 highlighted aspects of the amendment introduced in ordinance number 944. They include introducing the definition and use of banquet facilities in Bell Gardens Municipal Code Chapter 5.04, introduce banquet facilities use as a conditionally permitted use in the M1 zone in the Bell Gardens Municipal Code Chapter 9.14, introduce development standards for banquet facilities use in Bell Gardens Municipal Code Chapter 9.20.170, and introduce parking standards for banquet facility uses in Bell Gardens Municipal Code Chapter 9.38.050, consistent with surrounding jurisdictions. A general overview of standards utilized by directly abutting communities reflects the following for assembly uses. In the City of Commerce, 1 parking space per 4 fixed seats and 1 space per 20 square feet otherwise. Bell, 1 parking space per 4 fixed seats and 1 space per 50 square feet otherwise. For Cudahy, 1 parking space per 5 fixed seats and 1 space per 50 square feet otherwise. And Southgate, 1 parking space per 3 fixed seats and 1 space per 100 square feet otherwise. With the current parking standard in Bell Gardens at 1 parking space per 3 fixed seats and 1 space per 21 square feet. Staff analysis concludes that ordinance number 944 would be consistent with the City of Bell Gardens general plan. Specifically, Land Use Policy 3 emphasizes the city's commitment to promote compatible commercial development, to emphasize commercial identity, and to enhance the appearance, potential economic vitality, and revitalization. Land Use Policy 4 promotes the city's encouragement to maintain and rehabilitate existing industrial uses and private investment in the city's industrial economic base, while ensuring compliance with necessary environmental requirements. And Land Use Policy 5 that acknowledges the city's support of providing an environment to stimulate local employment, property values, community stability, and the economic vitality of existing local businesses. Finally, the recommendation is, with this presentation, the staff recommends Planning Commission take the following action. Determine the project categorically exempt based on the common sense and policy adoption provisions in CEQA pursuant to the state CEQA guidelines. Adoption of resolution PC 2024-13, recommending to City Council the approval of zoning code amendment 2024-029, and recommend the adoption of ordinance number 944. With that, staff and city attorney are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musea. Commissioners, any questions?
And Chair, if I may, just a reminder, we talked about this briefly at the last meeting. Every body, city councils, planning commissions, it's always confusing how to make a motion to approve. So all it takes is for someone to say, motion to approve the recommendations stated on the agenda. And then you don't have to read the whole thing. It doesn't require any of that. Motion to approve as stated on the agenda, and then, of course, a second and a vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just a question directed to staff. What are the specific conditions for banquet facilities in the M1 zone to mitigate potential impacts? Like, what are the conditions for the permits to be how should I say this? So that a property in that zone could be utilized, for that.
The staff has generated development standards that are consistent with other similar uses. For example, I'm looking at what was shared as a copy of the ordinance. For example, lighting plans will be required as a part of the submission. Security plans will be required as a part of their submission. And these will all be taken under review and under consideration by the Planning Commission because it would be a conditional use permit. So there are additional locational and development standards required of these applicants. They will need to provide as they submit.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I do have a question. Do we know where, or at least, do we have a map of the M1 zone? Andy?
One moment, I'm pulling that up for you, sir.
Thank you.
The M1 zone is this blue shaded area, the darker blue, if you will. So it runs along the southeast portion and then some portions of Clara Street and then along up Scout and this portion here. The CM zone is what you see as the lighter blue. So those would be the affected M1 areas. Oh, there we go. So I guess it's showing more of a dark blue here. These,
Sorry,
yeah.
where does the end and begin? Sorry.
So for this portion here on Clara,
Uh-huh.
the blue, It picks up again here and moves along Clara to the east. And you have Scout, it moves up here to Scout, this area here. Then also down in this area here.
Is that Garfield? Sorry, I just can't read.
Yes,
the-
yes, yes.
That major cross street
This
right there,
major
Garfield.
street coming down is Garfield.
Got it.
Here, let me zoom in. I'm so sorry. There we go. Yes, this is Garfield and this down here is Shoal Street.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Appreciate it.
very welcome.
I wanted to ask if there's any fiscal impact on the city's end that we should take into account.
None at this time, as this is purely policy.
Thank you.
And then this is Stephen Jones, city planner. In any event, when we do bring conditional use permits before the planning commission, there are application fees associated with it. The cost recovery isn't 100%, it isn't even close, but there is some degree of cost recovery or excuse me, cost recovery for staff time. So as they process, there is a fee, and any other administration or enforcement or implementation of an ordinance comes through staff time that is already accounted for, because we're already looking at the zoning code. We're adding to it, but there's already provisions for bank facilities, just not in M1. So we'd be adding, but at the same time, with cost recovery from fees, as well as the normal course of work that already occurs, the fiscal impact is minimal, but it's not something that we, at this point, would overanalyze.
I have a question for staff. Regarding the parking situation in those M1 zones, was the availability of street parking taken into account when calculating how many parkings per square feet?
Staff does not include public parking.
Follow-up question, regarding the utilization of the space and for efficiency, do you find that the requirement for parking allows for upward building to better utilize space? Or are we trying to, because of the, you know what I mean, like if we have a banquet down the stairs and, you know, office building on top, is this are we limiting the, you know, the buildings to just being a one floor and not utilizing space to the best of its abilities?
For these types of application, what will be considered is a case by case, and what will be examined is a time that those businesses are in operation, so that, for example, if there's an office use, those office hours versus the banquet facility hours, what will be taken into consideration is if there's a conflict and how that conflict will be resolved by the property owner. So these are all the things that will go into the analysis of the proposal while staff is reviewing the conditional use permit application. It's not as though the site is a dedicated site. There can be multiple uses, but again, it's case by case. So I can't speak to a hypothetical at this point.
I have one last question. It has to do with parking as well. He covered one of my questions. And to my understanding, it's one space for 3 fixed seats, right? And one space for per 21 square footage. My question is that space, could that be provided on site on the facilities, or could they actually provide that parking off site in a different building?
Currently, as the code reads, I was just confirming, currently as the code reads for the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, it is permissible to have an off-site parking. However, the applicant for that business will have to go through extensive work because there will be a need for covenant amendments for those properties so that there's a direct connection that should business owners change, circumstances change, it won't affect the banquet facility or the assembly area, because it's also going to be assembly area as well. So we wanted to make sure that we captured all possible uses. But yes, the potential is there for them to use an off-site parking location.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you for the visual, Ms. Musayeb. In in the zoning map, there were some zones that were categorized as parking buffer zones. Could you explain more in detail as to what that means? I noticed that some of these zones were surrounding the M1's location, so I just wanted to get more clarification on that.
Parking buffer zones are it's an overlay that essentially takes into consideration the spillover parking that may take place on public streets, to address your point. And it creates an extra sensitive area where it ensures that that does not happen, so that residents, visitors visiting either the residents or the businesses have adequate off-street parking.
Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry, you might have answered that, but I got lost a little bit on that. Regarding the M1 zones, is there specific regulation on parking? Is it like all day parking, or what's the regulation on that?
We have a parking standard. It has its own chapter. The Bell Gardens Municipal Code has its own parking standard, and parking is determined by use. So M1 is the zone, of course, but the use may vary within the M1 zone. So based on the use, the parking requirement will vary.
And one more thing, Mona, Stephen Jones, City Planner again, can you clarify that the spaces that we're proposing, are they increasing or decreasing? Because right now we're saying 1 for 3 fixed seats, but I think we're proposing a slightly different calculation for banquet facilities.
The zoning update, the zoning amendment would actually change it from 1 to 3 to 1 to 4. And then from the unfixed from 1 to 21 to 1 to, I want to say 50. 1 to 50. So we're actually creating an opening so that it's less restrictive than the existing code. And it's also comparable to our surrounding municipalities.
Part of that was because of the analysis in terms of the adaptive reuse of buildings that could increase the functionality of that space. So in the morning, again, it's office, or in the afternoon, it's, based on the permitted use. And then in the evenings, anecdotally in the evenings, a banquet facility could house the parking for the separate use. So it's to increase accommodation and make sure that there's a nexus between the number of parking spaces we're asking for and the use times and the different uses that are in one building. And that's also in response to the state's legislation. AB 2097 actually limits and constricts jurisdictions from requiring a minimum amount of parking within a high quality transit corridor. And with the size of the city, it's the likelihood that, if you looked at the zoning map again, the likelihood that most of those M1 zone properties are within that high quality transit corridor could increase. So in order to offset that restriction from not being able to require a minimum amount of parking for certain projects across the board, we increase the accommodation so that folks are more likely to provide that parking, because it's going to be an issue.
At this moment, can we motion to approve item 1? Yeah. Okay, motion to move forward with item number 1 as it is.
You second that? Planning Secretary?
Chairperson, if I may, we need to open the item for public comments before we make a motion.
All right. We will now open public comment for this item. Secretary, please announce the instructions for public participation.
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on the public hearing item number 1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And Chairperson, we did not receive any comment cards for this item, and I can go ahead and see if there's anyone in the chat line that's wishing to speak.
Perfect.
And it looks like we do not have anybody wishing to speak on this item.
All right. Thank you very much. If there are no objections by the Planning Commission, I will now close public participation. And commissioners, if there are no further questions, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 1 as it is.
I second that. Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
was that a yes?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes. Okay, public comment is now open for items listed on the Planning Commission agenda. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on agenda items. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. And we will begin to hear from members that are of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And we did not receive any comment cards for items on the agenda, and I will go ahead and see if there's anybody in the chat line. And it looks like we do not have anybody on the chat line.
Okay. There's no objection by the Planning Commission. I will now close public participation for agendized items. And now we will move over to the consent calendar. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to pull an item from the item for separate discussion? If not, I will place a motion to approve item number 3 on the consent calendar.
I second.
Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes. Planning Secretary, will you please announce discussion item number 4?
Sure. It is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission by motion organize and select a chairperson and a vice chairperson at this time. So I will now go ahead and open the floor for nominations for the position of chairperson.
And excuse me, Chair De La Rosa, may I? This, if I may, just to describe another suggestion about how this plays out, because again, at many council meetings and planning commission meetings, I've seen the members struggle with how formal it has to be, and I've even seen some meetings where they first take a where the body first takes a vote on a nomination and then takes a second vote on a appointment. So if I could just clarify, this is an opportunity for the body, the members, to just freely discuss this. So, you know, just have a conversation. Someone can say, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to be the chair or the vice chair, or I think so-and-so should, or just have a conversation. And then you'll get a sense of who you all kind of support, or whether you're close. Maybe it'll be a 50-50 thing. But then when you're ready, all it takes is a motion to appoint. So it would just be, I make a motion to appoint so-and-so as the chair, as the new chair, and then one vote. That's it. So nomination really just means suggesting a name. So you don't really have to make a nomination. You can just kind of talk about it and then make a motion to appoint. That would be the official action. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. So, for example, someone would place a motion to nominate so-and-so, and we would have a second, and would there be a roll call vote on that as well?
There would be a roll call vote on that, but I recommend first talking about it so that you don't have to go through then the embarrassment of everyone voting no, you know? Because you'll through talking about it, you'll kind of have a sense of which direction you're leaning.
Right. Thank you so much.
Quick question: how frequent do these changes happen?
That's a good question. Maybe that's a good one for Erica. That would be in the bylaws.
Per the bylaws, we do it once every 12 months in the month of May.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something that someone can motion to readdress, or it has to be a yearly thing?
It's for the bylaws, but you can change it. Go ahead.
That's right.
Oh.
Stephen's correct. Stephen's correct. You could change it. Oh, however, if it was a change to the bylaws, that should be agendized. So you wouldn't be able to change the bylaws tonight, but you could talk about that and you could give direction to staff, you know, hey, we'd like to do it every 6 months, or, you know, 3 times a year or something like that. Then you could then give direction to staff to come back with a resolution to make that change.
And also, I think we need to take into consideration that as elected members, if the person in city council term limit has expired, then that means that commissioner has to step down as well, correct? So then that might mean down the road, if that commissioner has to step down due to that city council member having to step down because they've expired their term, then the planning commission will have to do this again, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. That's correct. The planning commission, the planning commissioner would not automatically be terminated, but the new incoming council member would be able to appoint a new one.
And just to provide a little bit more context in case we didn't already, the reason we're just now doing it is because, well, it's May, but we did it in November or December of 2023 because of a vacancy here for that pretty much same situation. And we don't have a vice chair right now because of that same situation. Well, not really that, we just had it vacated. But so, yeah, we've been meaning to do this for a while, and the situation happened so that city council member left and the appointment was made, also left, and then there was another vacancy. So we're due.
Okay, if I may start the discussion, if I may ask from our current chairperson, the pros and cons of taking this responsibility. and the challenges, and just to hear what it takes to be in this role, please.
Great question. So prior to this, I've been a commissioner for about 3 years, and eventually, last year, I got appointed for vice chair. And again, due to the circumstances, it automatically placed me as chair due to that vacancy that occurred. But overall, it has been great working with staff, having meetings with city planner, and the director of city development as well. It's all been great and all, like communicating with city staff and getting more insights and nitpicking the agenda items and essentially getting a clear, concise, broken down view of the agendized items, and ultimately preparing for the meetings that come about. So yeah, that would essentially be my experience here in a nutshell.
Yeah, as far as for me, I know Chairperson De La Rosa, you've only been chairperson only for a few months, technically speaking. So for me, I mean, my opinion is that you should actually continue with that, at least for that position. That's at least my recommendation.
Is your microphone on? It's hard to hear you.
Yeah. Do you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, no problem. So basically, I'm making the recommendation, in my personal opinion, that Chairperson De La Rosa should continue in that role because technically he's only been chairperson for a few months.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Same here.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think that you're doing a thorough job. I do think that when there's like a pause in discussion, I'd like for you to step up a little faster than letting the silence like last like a minute. Just because I know that we're all have nothing to say on the specific item. Maybe you can just I can clearly see that no one's talking about it, but I think we're all in agreement. Let's move forward, right? I'd like to see more of that. And I just think that that's going to elevate you as a person in a public sphere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that being said, thank you again for the feedback and the statements made by each commissioner. With that being said, can we have a motion?
Sure, so I will go ahead and make a motion to elect Commissioner De La Rosa as a chairperson. And I'll go ahead and do the roll call. Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Mendez,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. So I will now go ahead and open the floor for the discussion to nominate for the position of vice chairperson.
Yes, would either Gustavo or Oscar be interested in that role?
I wouldn't be, just simply because I'm in too many boards already as it is. So my time is just, I'm pretty busy now.
Thank you, Commissioner De Leon. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I guess I could provide my trajectory. The city that I come from is the city of Cudahy, and I was also chairperson at the city of Cudahy during that time under Planning Commission. So I'm highly familiar with the functions, the role, and how to advocate for our community members. So usually the vice chairperson takes up the role when the chairperson himself or herself is not present, right? So I thank you for that, and I humbly accept.
All right. I would like to place a motion to appoint Commissioner Mendez as vice chair.
I second that motion for Gustavo.
Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Leon,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez, Vice Chairperson Mendez,
Yes.
and Chairperson De La Rosa.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Okay, so public comments now open for items not listed on the Planning Commission agenda. Secretary, will you please announce the instructions for public participation?
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items not listed on the Planning Commission agenda. Please state your name for the record. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit your comment cards now. And we did not receive any comment cards for items not listed on the agenda. I will go ahead and see if there's anybody in the chat line wishing to speak. And it doesn't look like we have anybody in the chat line, Chairperson.
Thank you. If there's no objection by the Planning Commission, I will now close public comments for non-agenda items. And now we will move over to staff comments.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. My name is Stephen Jones, City Planner. The next item is for updates that the City Council has done based on recommendations from the Planning Commission and for Community Development Department activities. During the May 13th City Council meeting just passed, items to consider action for staff negotiated and proposed development agreements for public benefits in exchange for up to 10 years of vested development rights for cannabis retail storefronts was continued to the June 10th meeting with 3-1 votes on both. So those items will be heard next month. And on April 22nd, council voted for the city to remain in the Affordable Housing Trust. And the city first became a member in June of 2023 to facilitate access to funding for affordable housing projects. Maintaining membership comes at a cost which contributes to funds for the region and trust administrative management. The city has at least one project that could be responsible for the production of at least 100 units for sale and for lease for families with household incomes below 120% of the area median income. The council also adopted a resolution to authorize purchase of hybrid vehicles with grant funding for Community Development Department vehicles for use in planning and building permits and in site inspections and housing division inspections, and for code enforcement as well. Council adopted ordinance number 942 to limit the number of available opportunities for cannabis retail storefront business regulatory permits to no more than 7. And then council received and filed a report on Monday as well with responsive information to the council's request for a summary of recent housing division activity and to clarify the rent stabilization ordinance's applicability to rented, leased mobile home spaces within mobile home parks. Council recommended specific ways to engage residents in mobile home parks for the ongoing rent stabilization and tenant eviction protection workshops, which occur every couple of weeks on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then in the biweekly newsletter, the staff highlighted the work done to release our RFPs for the impending development of the first Bell Gardens transit-oriented community specific plan and the Bell Gardens Climate Action Plan. Those RFPs close at the end of May. And among other things, staff highlighted the ongoing work to procure grants to do more work like that. And that concludes staff comments.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, any comments? If not, and if there's no objection by the members of the Planning Commission, I will now adjourn the regular Planning Commission meeting at 6:01 p.m.